Welcome back to the Matt Borger Show. So today I want to do something different. I listened to a podcast episode recently with Alex Hormozi and Jake Paul, and there were a few things said that I really wanted to talk about because I've been following Alex Hormozi for a while now. And, I've had mixed opinions of what's been happening to the company and the personal brand recently. And I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about some of those things. But I feel this particular video or podcast episode with Jake Paul was very revealing because he mentioned quite a few things that he hasn't talked about publicly for a very long time. He used to be very transparent about what was going on uh, with his businesses and whatnot. And then for a good year or so, he went very quiet. And I didn't really understand why that was happening. He basically stopped talking about the numbers. He stopped talking about the nitty gritties of what was going on with acquisition.com, their main business at the minute. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do this video and react to some of the things. And actually, once we're done watching this clip from the Jake Paul podcast, then we're gonna move on to watching another little segment from a podcast a year ago where he actually talks about some of the frustrations they had with these portfolio companies. And I thought it was very interesting to sort of see how they start to pivot and how their business model has actually completely shifted. And I was at their actually the first event when the shift happened. So this was in January of 2024. I was there in Las Vegas, and yeah, I saw the first event. I was there. Nowadays, like, they do significantly more events. They call them workshops, but that's essentially the business model now. And I had a lot of mixed feelings about it because his mentality and ideology was that, well, everything I do, I give away for free. Well, not anymore, right? Basically, the whole thing is turning into an education company, acquisition.com. The original concept was that they would do private equity and they would acquire either minority or majority stakes in companies. And now it's completely changed. And now they're doing something wildly different. And I don't know, a part of me almost feels like they're just sort of cashing in. It went through my mind that might be the case. They're cashing in, and both Alex and Leila have massive followings. Like, they have millions of followers across platforms. Well, this whole acquisition thing didn't really make sense. So what are we going to do now? It kind of feels like that. And now they're just cashing in. And yeah, like, I have mixed feelings about that because until this time, the whole idea was that, Alex is not looking for the average person's money. He's there to sort of document everything that they're doing. And that was one of the reasons why I really liked watching his content, because he was basically documenting his journey and talked about a lot of the high level stuff the average person doesn't really get access to. So to me, he was almost like a second generation Gary Vee, but I feel the shift and the focus for them completely changed. Anyways, so without further ado, let's watch the clip, and then I'll probably comment more once we're done watching it.
About 40-ish million in distributions before we sold the company, and we sold the company for 46. And then we started the family office,
and he's talking about Gym Launch here. That was a company they started Layla and Alex, and they sold that to a private equity firm, and they got 46 for it. Just to give you guys a little bit more context.
Was just going to be the holdco acquisition.com. I started making content with the idea of like, I wonder if I can attract businesses so I can do like minority deals. And that was kind of the whole thesis in the beginning, was like, I'll just do these kind of, 10, 20% ish chunks of companies. That ended up sucking. And so I did like 24 deals in 24 months, and then just like got rid of almost all of them minus 4. And then I was like, okay, let's not do that. And so then it was like, we need more meaningful stakes of fewer, far better businesses. And all of those companies, I didn't put like any brand or anything behind it. I just like invested in them. And so it was like, okay, school, this is a deal. It makes a ton of sense. Let's do this. And then like, that's probably more how we're approaching it now, is like, because we're also pretty good at building business. So we started our advisory practice in January of last year in 2024. And that's now a very big business.
What do you advise on?
It's
like what industries?
Oh, it's open. It's SMBs. So it's like 500,000 on the low side to 50 million is kind of like the sweet spot. So if you think like you've got like Gartner, you've got McKinsey, you've got Deloitte, you've got these kind of like, they serve I would say like the top end of the market. And then there's obviously like the guru world that's kind of like underneath. And we kind of serve like low mid market. And so, people fly out here, they'll meet with our directors that are like for paid media or for content or for whatever it is they're doing. So like maybe you have a $14 million plumbing business and you're like, all right, well, how do I scale this thing? It's like, all right, you need a director of this, and this is how the ad should look for recruiting this specific role. And your supply constraints, so you need more technicians. This is how we go recruit these technicians, that kind of thing.
How do you make B2B content actually go?
All right, I think this is enough. So essentially, here he sort of stated that, this was something that we've kind of known already. If you follow Alex and if you listen closely, that he's done 24 deals in 24 months, and he got rid of most of them. I remember I was talking to someone in Vegas, and they said that they got rid of half of them, and they started doing these workshops. And initially, I think the first one I've been to, it was more of a test. Then, like they were working on the product, I guess, because there were a few things there that I didn't like. Like, for example, the networking part was not great. The education part was great, but the networking part wasn't. So yeah, here we go. He did say that they moved on from that model, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I just wanted to understand, like, why now? What could have happened? What could have caused this? Because from a business perspective, I think it's very interesting that they made this move. But in all honesty, what I know is that they were only focused on American businesses, or businesses that predominantly served the US market. And if you really think about that, if you know anything about this channel, or if you've watched any of my videos, I've been talking a lot about how things are really shifting in the United States, and how things are trending down. And it doesn't really matter where you sort of serve the small to medium sized business space in the United States. I think all of us have been affected by the election, by the current administration's actions, and how that had an impact across the globe, and specifically how that had an impact on American businesses, but also consumers, right? Because at the end of the day, when we're thinking about consumers, small businesses in the United States, the fuel, the very thing that actually makes these businesses work is consumers, one way or another. Even if you're a B2B business, because at the end of the day, if you're working with other businesses, well, maybe you're B2B and you're working with B2C or B2B businesses, it doesn't matter. The thing is, the vast majority of the US market is based on how much people consume, right? And when there's uncertainty, when things are kind of getting off track, even if you're trying to help people. And I remember Alex mentioned in the presentation that, they've done big deals. Like, they made millions of dollars for these businesses that they acquired. But the problem was based on, well, obviously I don't have all the info, right? But I just wanted to show you another clip a year ago where he actually talked about some of the frustrations he had. And even though the deals I'm doing, I'm nowhere close to like what Alex is doing, but I felt very similarly where, you know, you perform a service, you do a deal with a business, and very similar things happen. You know, they're not willing to scale, they're not growing, they're not looking to do what has to be done for the business. They take a lot of money out, and usually that comes at the cost of the business itself, right? Because a business, you know, most businesses are not milking cows. You know, you have to have employees. If you don't have employees and you're trying to do everything by yourself, right? And I've seen that in the SMB space a lot. Like usually that will eventually come back and bite you in the ass big time. So, anyways, let's watch that clip as well, because I think it's really fascinating how someone at his level started to change his mind about things because of everything that has been happening. And actually he mentions a few things which we're not going to watch because it's irrelevant to the video, about like how he feels politically, like he's a libertarian according to this. I'm going to leave the link to the episode in the description. Feel free to watch the whole thing. I felt that this was probably one of the best Alex Hormozi podcasts for a good while. So anyways, let's watch the other video. Yeah. So this one is already like a year old. So I think it was recorded, I believe it was recorded in around January of 2024. So let's listen to it.
So at that point, his reputation provides a lot of value, but he's not necessarily trying to have another acquirer in the future. For us, we are trying to have another acquirer in the future for most of the companies that we buy. And that has shifted. In the beginning, we were just planning on buying and holding, but I would say that we have now learned that it's very tough, especially if you keep the founder in place, which is usually how we do our deals, because usually the business will be limited by the founder. And so at that point, it's like, okay, it's clear that this founder is not competent past this level, and so we should sell.
When you're going and analyzing different founders, companies to buy, what's like the dream founder kind of characteristics? Yeah. And then what are the dream sort of company characteristics that you specifically are looking after? You're like, okay, this is a grand slam.
Yeah. We can start with founder. So founder, it all comes down to character and experience. So if a founder has a huge amount of experience specifically with the problem that they're trying to solve, so we're talking 5 to 10 years of dealing with whatever the issue is, and a lot of times if they made the solution to help themselves, that helps because they usually tend to be a little more product focused. So a product driven entrepreneur who has lived with the issue for a long period of time is incredibly coachable, but balances that with a lot of confidence, willingness to take risk, and ambition. Because one of the issues that we've actually had more than once is that, we have a company, we invest in them, and then we triple the company in like a year. And then the founder is making more money than they ever thought possible, and then they just go golfing every day. And that's frustrating for me. And the thing is like, this is where, if you're at the deal table, everyone will, make promises and be like, oh, I want to go to the moon. I want to go to $1 billion. I want to go to 250 million. But all of a sudden you actually find out that 500 grand a month in personal income, that's it. That's actually their number, and a lot of times also the flip. So one of the cons of the fame is that people also know what I say I want before.
Yeah. So as you can hear, this was recorded a year ago, and this was a huge issue for them, right? And trust me when I'm saying this, when you're working with small businesses, this comes up even when you're not giving them money or buying a stake in the company. It happens either way, right? We set a goal. Let's say we want to hit $100,000 per month, right? And then in reality, like the person doesn't even really have the ambition to manage the business. That's another thing I've seen a lot when just purely based on experience, right? So like around when a business hits around 8 figures, like you really need to have executives uh helping you, right? Like you got to have a, at least a COO, right? Potentially CTO and CMO could help too, depending on like what business we're talking about. Sales manager. And more often than not, what I've seen up to this point is that the CEO, the original founder, wants to take a step back because they've been running the business for a long time, and they might hire a CEO to manage the business. But in reality, that person, I mean, obviously, that person has significantly less experience in managing that specific business compared to the founder itself, right? It's pretty obvious. And there's an incredible amount of like, I want to lay back and like, I don't want to do the work type attitude going on. And that creates a lot of tension. So I think it's super interesting for me to kind of hear and see that how a very successful person like Alex had to completely shift his business model, because it does not matter whether you're good at what you do or not in today's economy. It doesn't matter. What matters is how the whole thing is playing out, right? Because if you're amazing at scaling businesses, or maybe you're not scaling businesses, but you're selling cookies, right? You could be the best at what you do. But if you're having an issue with the people who are buying from you, or they're having an issue and there's a mismatch in expectations or whatever, it's going to create problems. And again, what I've seen for the past 2 or 3 years is that what Alex is talking about, has been a reoccurring thing. The market is extremely bad right now. And a lot of it really comes down to complacency or just pure greed. And, people want the help, but then once they get the help, they don't want to do the work anymore. And they're comfortable, or they're, as Alex said, they're going to go golfing. And look what happens when the economy is like that. You have to completely do a 180 in order to stay afloat. And even a person like Alex, and I believe he's very knowledgeable, even him, he had to completely shift his business around. A private equity model, which is, I believe, very effective if you know what you're doing, and he knows what he's doing, but it doesn't matter, because in this economy, that it's not a deciding factor. Being good at what you do seems like it's not a deciding factor. Even if you know how to get the business, you know how to make your deals, you know how to work them, still there's a major attitude problem right now in business circles. I see that all the time. And it's this complacency, this I'm like, I don't want to do the work anymore. And it's really hurting people. I think it's hurting businesses. It's also hurting customers and people who are working for those businesses. Because just imagine if the business owner is golfing every day and you're working for that person. I mean, the dynamic of that situation is going to be less than ideal. Let's just say that, right? Because I believe a stagnating business is a failing business. So if if there's no way for that person to go further and go ahead, and if it's literally just a cash cow, it's going to become very problematic. And I think a lot of people who are ambitious in this economy are getting just fucked. Like, I'm going to be very blunt and honest, just fucked. Because ambition, knowledge, and expertise don't matter shit right now. And I think it's time for us to take a step back and really think about this and why this is happening, and potentially what we can do to fix it, because it has to be fixed. If culture in the United States will keep trending in this direction, the ultimate outcome will be a lot of pain, a pain that a lot of people are feeling already, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I believe that's why a lot of people are leaving, for this very reason. If people, just imagine, when people, a person like Alex Hormozi, he has the capital. He can hire whoever he wants because people want to work with him because of his personal brand. He has everything in his power to make a private equity model work where the idea is that he's going to help businesses grow, which ultimately helps the economy. But then when a person like him has issues, not with getting it done, but with the founders who are too lazy to actually care enough to actually take things further, like, that's where the whole thing is kind of falling apart. So I think there's a lot for us to learn here, and I think there's a lot of takeaways, and I'm really hoping that things are going to get better. I don't think they completely will. I think things are going to escalate more, but I'm trying to stay positive, and I'm trying to look at this whole thing as, hopefully things will trend up eventually, and then everyone is going to be better off. All right. I think I ended this video with a little rant at the end, which is totally needed. So please subscribe to this channel. I've been trying to switch up the content a little bit based on, how I feel about everything. So I know that this format may be a little bit new, specifically the topic. But I think this video, I had to make it. When I heard the podcast, I just knew that this video had to be made. So again, please subscribe to this channel. Have a look at my other content. I'm trying to upload as frequently as possible without being overwhelmed. I don't want to do 5 videos a week because that was too much. Please comment on this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you around.